It's over, Adaeze. Easy peasy. No need to pretend again. You were my ticket, your company, your father's empire. And now, it's all mine. Rest in peace, my dear wife. Nobody will ever know what really happened.
Oh my God. He really wanted me dead. He actually wanted me dead.
The good thing is, he didn't succeed. Come on, let's get out of here.
The house burned with his wife inside. Or at least, that was what Tobenna thought. What he didn't know was that his carefully planned murder had already failed. But how did it get to this? How did a couple who once seemed so deeply in love end up here, with one plotting the other's death? To understand how everything went so wrong, let's go back to where it all began. In Lekki, behind gates painted the color of gold, stood a magnificent mansion where a young woman named Adaeze lived with her husband. The man the entire estate believed was the gentlest man alive. Adaeze had inherited her wealth, but there was much more to her story than that. Her father had spent 30 years building a successful machinery importing business before cancer took him quietly in his sleep. After his father's death, Adaeze didn't simply inherit the company and leave his operations to others. She spent years learning the business from the ground up, sitting in boardrooms with executives twice her age, studying contracts and tariffs, learning the machinery trade, understanding every department, and staying late at the office long after everyone else had gone home. By the time she met Tobenna, the company was truly hers, not just because her name was on the documents, but because she had worked relentlessly to make it bigger, stronger, and more successful. Adaeze had inherited the foundation, but she had built the empire. Tobenna was charming in the way certain men are charming when they have studied exactly what a woman wants to hear. He met her at a mutual friend's wedding in Victoria Island, complimented not her beauty first, but her composure. You carry yourself like a woman who has never needed anyone to carry her. But if you ever let me, I'd want to carry you. Not because I think you are weak, but because you deserve to rest sometimes. Adaeze, who has spent years being both daughter and heir, being strong because weakness was a luxury she could not afford, melted at those words like they were water on thirst she didn't know she had. They married within a year. And within that same year, the cracks began. Small ones, forgivable ones, the kind a woman in love explains away before she even realizes she's explaining. I don't want to work under my wife, Tobenna told her one evening when she offered him a management role at Okonji Holdings. I want something that is mine, not something that carries your name before it carries my sweat. It sounded at that time like pride, like the kind of dignity some men were taught to protect at all costs. Adaeze respected it, even admired it. She did not know that dignity does not usually look like a grown man spending 11 months searching for opportunities while sleeping until noon. Why she left for the office at 7 a.m. and returned to find him sitting comfortably, phone in hand, laughing at something. Her friend Ijeoma noticed it first. Ijeoma always noticed things first. That man is not searching for a job, Ada. He's searching for something, and whatever it isn't a job. Adaeze laughed it off over a plate of peppered chicken and a chilled drink at a restaurant somewhere in Ikoyi. Tobenna is the kindest man I know. You don't know him like I do. I believe he's working towards something huge. She believed it. She believed it the way people believe the things they have already decided to defend. Because to doubt Tobenna would mean admitting that perhaps she had married a stranger. But Tobenna appeared to be hiding nothing. He had even given her the password to his phone without being asked, as though he wanted to prove he had nothing to hide. He never snatched his phone away when she came near. That she would learn much later was the trick. A locked phone invites suspicion. An unlocked one, carelessly left on the dining table while he showered, invites the opposite. Trust. And Tobenna understood psychology better than he understood any job he claimed to be hunting for. Because what Adaeze didn't know was that Tobenna had a second phone. And whenever she left for work, he would take it out, lower his voice, and call a woman named Ngozi, Adaeze's own cousin. The same cousin Adaeze had welcomed back into her life after her father's funeral. The same cousin she trusted so deeply that she had already chosen her to be the godmother of her unborn child. One morning, the moment Adaeze drove out of the compound, Tobenna picked up the hidden phone and dialed Ngozi. She answered almost immediately. "Just a few more weeks," Tobenna whispered, glancing toward the windows, even though the house was empty. Then his voice dropped even lower. "Everything she owns will be ours." He paused. "All of it." While Adaeze worked tirelessly, prayed for her marriage, and believed in the man she had chosen to spend her life with, she had no idea that the same man was quietly plotting her downfall. But Tobenna's plan was about to take a turn he never expected. Adaeze had no idea that the person who would save her from the carefully planned plot against her was someone she never imagined would come to her rescue. His name was Emeka, and by every account, he was an unremarkable man. 29 years old, a plumber by trade, quiet and dependable, the kind of tradesman people called when a pipe bursts, a tap refused to run. That morning, the shower drain in the master bathroom had suddenly blocked, leaving water pooling across the bathroom floor. Adaeze was already running late for work, so she used the guest bathroom instead. After getting dressed, she kissed Tobenna's cheek and left for work, unaware that this small domestic inconvenience was about to save her life. Emeka finished the repair by midday. It was only at the gates, keys already in the ignition of his old Toyota Hilux, when he suddenly realized he had left his adjustable wrench, the good one, the one his late father had given him, beside the bathtub. With a quiet sigh, he turned around and walked back through the side gates. He was halfway down the corridor when he heard Tobenna's voice coming from the study, low and urgent. "I'm not a baby. I know what I'm doing. I've told you, Friday." Emeka stopped. He hadn't meant to listen. But then, Tobenna continued. "She wakes up every morning at 2 and goes straight for coffee. She hasn't missed it once in 3 years of marriage. The gas line will be loose enough to cause a leak. When it goes, it will look like an accident. No one will suspect anything." Emeka's blood ran cold. There was a pause. Then Tobenna spoke again. "I said I'm sure. Friday is perfect." Emeka stood completely still. The wrench was suddenly the last thing on his mind. He pressed one hand against the cool marble counter, trying to steady himself as the meaning of what he had just heard settled in. He didn't know this woman. He didn't know what kind of marriage she was in. But he knew one thing. Someone was planning to kill her. And he couldn't simply walk away and let a woman die because her husband wanted her money. Emeka quietly turned around. He left the house without his wrench. Finding her took Emeka the whole day. He walked quietly and carefully, asking around the estate for the name of the madam who lived at the address, then tracing her to Okonji Holdings on Victoria Island. By evening, he was waiting in the car park, feeling more like a man committing a crime than someone trying to prevent one. When Adaeze finally walked toward her car in a clean grey blazer, tired from a long board meeting, Emeka approached with both hands raised, the universal gesture of a man trying not to be mistaken for a threat. "Ma'am, please, I need 2 minutes. is a matter of life and death. Those words sounded different coming from a stranger. Adaeze's first instinct was to run, scream, or get into her car and lock the doors. But something in his face stopped her. There was no menace in his face, only desperate urgency. You can get in your car if you don't trust me standing here. Please, just hear me out first. Adaeze unlocked her car, but kept her phone firmly in her hand, ready to call for help. She allowed Emeka to sit in the passenger seat while she remained behind the wheel. Then he played the recording. His phone had been in his pocket that morning when he overheard Tobenna in the study. He hadn't planned to record anything. He had simply pressed the button on instinct, capturing the final 30 seconds of a conversation that was meant to end Adaeze's life. She listened once, then she listened again. Her hands didn't shake. That surprised her later more than anything else. She had always imagined that discovering such a betrayal would bring tears, screaming, perhaps even disbelief. Instead, there was only a strange, terrifying stillness, as though her body had understood the truth before her heart was ready to accept it. I want to go to the police right now, she said. Emeka nodded slowly. If you do that now, ma'am, with respect, all you have is a voice recording, and my word, he'll deny everything. He could say the recording was fabricated. He could say I'm some madman trying to extort you. Adaeze stared at him. So, what are you suggesting? Let him think he's winning. Emeka said, let him make the next move. We catch him in the act, with witnesses and evidence he cannot explain away. He paused. And you don't even know who the other person is. Adaeze looked down at her phone. For the first time, the thought crossed her mind that the betrayal might be bigger than Tobenna. What do we do? Emeka met her eyes. We let them believe you still know nothing. It was Adaeze who later realized the hardest kind of patience. She had to go home that night, smile at the man she loved, sit across from him at dinner, and pretend everything was normal, all while knowing that he had been planning the day she would die in the most heartbreaking way. Over the next few days, Adaeze moved around the house with the carefulness of a woman who had learned the truth but was pretending she hadn't. She still woke up every night for coffee she no longer drank. She would quietly make her way downstairs, knowing Tobenna was watching and waiting for her to do exactly what she had always done. So she played along. She let him believe she was still waking up for coffee, because if Tobenna thought his plan was still working, he would have no reason to suspect that Adaeze already knew everything. Friday came the way Fridays do, ordinary in every visible way. Adaeze woke at exactly 2 a.m., as she always did. Beside her, she felt Tobenna stare. She kept her eyes closed, but she was watching him without appearing to watch. He pretended to remain asleep. Waiting, she now understood, for the sound of her footsteps heading toward the kitchen. Instead, Adaeze quietly slipped out through the back door. Her heart hammered so loudly that she was certain the entire estate could hear it. Outside, Emeka was waiting by the fence in the darkness. He had arrived almost an hour earlier and parked his in-laws 3 streets away so no one would notice him. They stood together in the cold morning air, watching the house from a safe distance. Adaeze clasped her hands together and prayed. Not for her marriage. That marriage had already died somewhere between "she never skips coffee" and "Friday is perfect." She prayed only that she had made the right decision, trusting a stranger over the man she had shared the bed with for 3 years. Then it happened. The explosion wasn't the dramatic fireball from a movie. It was a dull, heavy warmth. A second later, glass shattered somewhere on the ground floor. Then flames erupted through the kitchen windows, climbing rapidly toward the curtains and spreading across the ceiling. Adaeze's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God!" Tobenna came running out of the house seconds later. He screamed her name. He ran toward the flames, throwing sand uselessly at a fire that had already taken hold. From where they stood, Adaeze watched him perform the role of a devastated husband with frightening skill. He looked terrified. He looked helpless. He looked exactly like a man watching the woman he loved die. Emeka drove her to his modest 2-bedroom flat in Aja that morning. Adaeze sat on a sofa, still wrapped in the wrapper she had thrown over her nightdress, shivering, not from the cold, but from something far worse: shock. By evening, the news had already reached her through the television. A tragic house fire in Lekki, a grieving husband, a wife presumed dead in the blaze. Tobenna, she learned, had begun speaking to a funeral planner less than 18 hours after the fire. The next morning, Ngozi arrived at the burned house, her eyes red and swollen. She embraced Tobenna in full view of the sympathetic neighbors, whispering condolences that Adaeze knew were really congratulations. Adaeze watched everything in silence. And finally, the tears came. Not for the marriage, not even for Tobenna. She cried for the sister she had trusted enough to call family. For the next few days, Emeka's small apartment became her temporary refuge, and he was the perfect host. Adaeze wasn't grateful only for being alive. She was grateful in a smaller and almost shameful way for the silence, for 3 days away from board meetings, away from the house she now understood had never truly been a home, and away from the exhausting performance of always having to be strong for everyone who depended on her. Then, 4 days after the fire, Tobenna and Ngozi walked into the office of Barrister Chukwuma Eze, Adaeze's family lawyer of more than a decade. They came with a story already rehearsed. As her husband and closest surviving relative, they claimed they needed to begin the process of settling her estate, the company, the properties, the accounts. Barrister Eze, a careful man who had drafted Adaeze's father's will himself, said something was wrong almost immediately. Tobenna's grief seemed to switch on and off like a light he controlled. They were still talking when the office door opened. Adaeze stood in the doorway, alive, dressed simply, and standing half a step behind her was Emeka. Tobenna's face changed. Shock came first, then disbelief, and before he could stop himself, the words escaped his mouth. "You are supposed to be dead." The room went completely silent. 5 words. 5 words that contained the confession he had been trying to hide. Tobenna scrambled to recover. "Thank God you survived. I was devastated. I'm only trying to..." Before he could continue, Emeka stepped forward. He took out his phone and pressed play. Tobenna's own voice filled the office, certain and cold. "Friday is perfect. When it goes, it will look like an accident. No one will suspect anything." The color drained from Tobenna's face. In that moment, he knew there was no way to explain his way out of what they had just heard. Adaeze looked at the man she had married. Really looked at him, perhaps for the first time in 3 years. And what she felt wasn't rage. Rage would come later, in private, in the quiet hours, when the betrayal finally settled in her bones. What she felt in that moment was something closer to grief. Grief for her own judgment. "I always knew you were lazy," she said quietly. "I loved you anyway. I told myself you would eventually find your own ground, that your pride was worth respecting. I never once imagined your pride would nearly cost me my life." Then she turned to Ngozi. Her cousin's composure had already collapsed. Tears streamed down her face. "We were supposed to be family." "I was angry," Ngozi sobbed. You had everything. The house, the company, the name. I had nothing. Tobenna came to me first. Please, forgive me. Adaeze stared at her. What I have, my father gave me the foundation for. I built the rest with 15-hour days you never once asked me about. Her voice remained calm. Nobody gave me anything you couldn't have earned yourself. If envy hadn't eaten the years you could have spent working. Within the hour, the police arrived. Tobenna and Ngozi were arrested. After the investigation, they were charged with conspiracy to murder, attempted murder, and fraud. When the case finally went to trial months later, the evidence was overwhelming. And at the center of it all was the recording that had started with a plumber simply forgetting his wrench. They were both sentenced to 15 years imprisonment. Adaeze tried more than once to reward Emeka. She offered him money, a position in her company, even a stake in the business. Anything she could think of that might somehow repay a debt she knew she could never fully settle. Each time, Emeka refused, gently but firmly. I didn't save you for money, he told her. I saved you because a man plotting to kill his own wife for money is the kind of evil that shouldn't be allowed to win. That was reason enough. So Adaeze stopped trying to repay him. Instead, something else grew between them, slowly, unexpectedly, and honestly. It wasn't romance, not at first. It was friendship. What grew between them was a friendship far more honest than anything Adaeze had known in her 3 years of marriage with Tobenna. A friendship with no hidden motives, no pretense, and no lies. Just the truth. They talked on quiet Sunday afternoons, sometimes about business, sometimes about life, sometimes about nothing at all. Adaeze slowly found herself becoming comfortable around a man who wanted nothing from her. Not her money, not her connections, not her success. Just two people learning, one quiet Sunday at a time, what trust was supposed to feel like. Moral of the story: money can attract people, but it cannot reveal their true intentions. Sometimes, the person you trust most may be the one hiding the greatest betrayal, while a stranger may show you the kind of loyalty you never expected. Never ignore the warning signs. Never let love blind your judgment. And never underestimate the goodness of someone simply because they have little to offer you.